Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's CC Webinar Live Keynote and Panel Discussion Session. And thank you for joining. We would also like to thank Telefonica for sponsoring today's session. Now, I would like to pass on the microphone to Eric to introduce the keynote speakers and to moderate the session. For our audience who are joining us today, if you have any questions to our keynote speakers, please do use the chat box option throughout the session. And now that's all from my side. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Laura, and welcome to all of you out there. I'm delighted on behalf of the Carrier community to have three keynote speakers, Mercedes, Carlos, and Lorenzo, also being at on the panel here at the Telefonica Global Solutions webinar powered by Carrier community. Here with me on the air. TGS, Telefonica Global Solutions, manages the international wholesale, global roaming, and multinational business of the Telefonica Group, along with the USA businesses. And of course, as a tier one carrier, TGS has peering agreements with all the tier one carriers in the market and brings its scale, global reach, and experience to its customer partnerships, enabling customers to grow their own roaming businesses. So today we're going to talk about the 5G roaming. We will start the session with the keynote presentation, starting with Carlos from Telefonica, of course, and afterwards we'll bridge this into an interactive knowledge and sharing panel session with you guys. So let me give Mercedes and Carlos and Lorenzo a quick minute to introduce themselves, and then we're going to move on. So Mercedes, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Eric, for having us today. My name is Mercedes Pulido. I work in TGS, Telefonica Global Solution, already for 20 years, most of them in the roaming business. I work in IPX and roaming, specialized more in the connectivity, meaning signaling and roaming bus services. So more focused in the pre-sale, but also with the rest of my colleagues in the development for current and new services.
Okay, thank you, Mercedes. Carlos?
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. My name is Carlos Gamboa. I'm the IPX product manager at Telefonica Global Solutions. I look into the IPX and signaling solutions we offer for roaming. Over the last 10 years, I've been working in this sector. I've seen the advent of 4G, the income of 4G into roaming, the services we carriers have provided around 4G. Now we are looking into 5G. And through these sessions, I hope to be able to share some of the knowledge we have gained around 5G roaming.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. So last but not least, Lorenzo.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Eric, for the presentation. My name is Lorenzo Bustos. I have been working for Telefonica since 2013, dealing with IPX and other mobile services from a business point of view, providing support to sales area and dealing with the peering IPX peering strategy.
Okay, thank you very much, Mercedes, Carlos, and Lorenzo. So, guys, we're gonna want to talk about today about the 5G roaming, a hot topic. So, and evolving your connectivity and VAS to succeed in the new future, as we would like to call it. It's already a reality. The future of the 5G is here right now, and in this webinar, Telefonica Global Solutions will examine the impact 5G is having on roaming infrastructure and services for the operators and carriers, and the challenges that lie ahead. They will also share their recommendations on the next steps that should be taken to guarantee connectivity with your roaming partners and roamers in the new market landscape to ensure your roaming business remains competitive and successful in this new future. So we're going to have a keynote speaker, and we have a specialty today, actually, because all the three panelists will be in there, which is a great honor to me. So Carlos, I think you can take it away. The floor is yours. You can start, and we're happy and more than to listen to you guys. And so please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction and for the brief summary you've made. It makes it easier for me to introduce the subjects. Today, my colleagues and I will try to give an overview of the status of 5G roaming, what is needed to provide 5G roaming, how this will impact data roaming, how this will impact the ecosystems. And we hope that after the session, you have a better understanding of what 5G roaming will mean to operators and carriers or IPX providers. I think that we are all aware that 5G is the next big evolution in cellular technology. It's, as Eric has said, a reality. We have seen that the non-standalone approach has been launched in many countries. We have countries like in Spain where all operators are launching a non-standalone and have that implemented. And we are seeing the first moves towards the standalone implementations. As a big summary about 5G, I know that all of us have heard much about it. It's an evolution that for the first time includes specifications around communication for machines. It's a solution that highlights security, and we'll see that how security will impact 5G roaming. And it's also, and I've already mentioned it, non-standalone, standalone. It's a technology that has been designed to allow a smooth evolution and a smooth transition. This will also impact 5G roaming. So let's take a look where we are right now with 5G roaming. As I mentioned, with this smooth transition that 5G allows with this non-standalone approach, in the non-standalone scenario where we use the new 5G radio access, but still the old 4G core, roaming is done as with 4G. So we'll still use on the international side DRAs and diameters, but we don't need new protocols. We, however, need new agreements and new service openings, as from the operator side, we have to make sure that our customers using the 5G radio access can make use of their services. What's going to come? 5G standalone, once operators start deploying their 5G cores, will obviously want to extend the benefits of 5G and 5G standalone to their customers while abroad. We can discuss in another moment how the behavior of customers will be after the current corona crisis, but definitely at some point end users will want to make use of all the capabilities that 5G allows while roaming. In this new scenario, we'll have on the international side new elements coming. The keywords here are SEP, so the new node that will be introduced, new protocols, HTTP2 in this case. We'll go further into detail in a minute. And besides these new protocols, new network equipments, we'll need the new agreements and new service openings to make this work. If this last two elements, if they're not provided from the non-stand alone scenario. So in a summary, we are already seeing traffic and roaming on 5G non-standalone, and 5G standalone roaming will come soon. Which are if we look at the benefits and the disadvantages that the two scenarios, the 5G non-standalone and the 5G standalone have in regards of roaming, we'll see that 5G non-standalone, that's the current situation, allows for increased bandwidth. That's roamers can make use of all the available bandwidth for 5G. They, however, are not able to use all the additional features, especially for machine type communications, that 5G allows. Again, on the plus side, the roaming scenario isn't affected because it's basically 4G roaming, at least on the signaling part. So all the existing services and value-added services that operators expect, such as steering of roaming or welcome SMS, can still be provided. In this 5G scenario, IPX providers and carriers such as Telefonica Global Solutions can provide part of the benefits of 5G without disturbing the current work of the way of working. Once we move to the 5G standalone scenario, we'll get additional benefits. Obviously, we'll have the increased bandwidth that we are already seeing today, but we'll be able to use all those features around the machine type communication or the ultra reliable low latency communications, all these capabilities that are expected to drive IoT traffic and new use cases. We even will be able to see network slicing and roaming, although this will be probably not in the near future. On the downsides, well, downsides of the 5G standalone are important. We'll see new protocols, new equipments, not only on the carrier side, also on the operator side. We'll have to adapt our current value-added solutions, steering of roaming, welcome SMS, to this new scenario. We'll have to make those services work together with 4G, and if operators haven't switched off 3G yet, we'll even have to make them work with three technologies, 3G, 4G, and 5G. And as we'll see, 5G introduces new complexities. As I mentioned, security is a key element on 5G. It's a key element on 5G roaming, and this introduces new complexity. IPX providers will try to help operators to overcome this complexity, as in the same way as we've been doing with 3G, 4G signaling, with 3G, 4G data roaming. Although there's a caveat to this intention on our side, we might be not able to do this because the excess of security. And this is a topic that I'm going to address now. It's how the architecture around 5G roaming is built and how this will impact operators and IPX providers. This is key as some of the elements of the 5G roaming scenarios aren't closed yet. They are still under discussion at the GSMA. There are several options being discussed, and each one has an impact. So I'll try to explain those impacts and make them as clear as possible for you. 5G in the roaming scenario, it keeps a separation of the signaling and the user plane as we are accustomed to previous technologies. In order for you to get accustomed to the terms, signaling is handled by an interface that's called N32, and the user plane is handled by an interface called N9. We introduce new elements for the signaling, the security edge protection proxy. both at the visited and the home network, and a new protocol that's to communicate these two nodes, that's HTTP2. As I mentioned, these nodes are especially designed for security, as 5G has put a lot of effort and focus on security. We'll look a bit deeper into the N32 interface and how it's implemented. Currently, there are two implementations being discussed: Transport Layer Security, TLS in short, or the Protocol for N32 Interconnect Security, PRINCE in short. Which is the difference? How do they work? Well, the main difference is that in TLS we have an end-to-end encrypted communication between the visited and the home SEP. That's all the communications needed between the visited and the home network are encrypted. They're still being transported over an IP transport layer using the current IPX providers, but these IPX providers are not anymore service aware. They see a traffic flow but can't inspect the packets, can't inspect the application protocols, as they are being encrypted end-to-end by the SEP nodes. On Prince, we have also an encrypted communication between the visited and the home SEP. However, this encryption doesn't affect all the fields. That means that some of the information of the application layer is transported plain text. This information is transported plain text in order for the IPX providers in the path to inspect that information and eventually amend those fields. That means that IPX providers using this Prince model can apply changes to the signaling exchanged between the home and the visited SEP, much the same way as it's done currently with services like steering of roaming, welcome SMS, or similar when they are performed by the IPX providers. If we look at the advantages and disadvantages that these two options present, we'll see that TLS has a higher security, as the operations are only in the hand of the mobile operators. There is no interaction and no option for IPX providers or other parties to inspect the traffic. So we have this full encrypted communication. However, this isolation of the communication between the visited and the home network is a game changer, in the sense that operators aren't free anymore to outsource certain roaming value-added services to an IPX provider. As this IPX provider isn't able to inspect the traffic, he can't modify it. Additionally, in case an operator has previously outsourced 3G and 4G roaming value-added services, this operator won't be able to integrate these services with the new technology, with 5G. And we are aware that services like steering of roaming should provide an uniform behavior over all technologies. If we look at advantages, disadvantages of the Prince solution, we'll see that with Prince, IPX providers still can provide roaming value-added services, and they can integrate it with the current 3G and 4G solutions. This obviously in case operators have decided to contract those services to an IPX provider. The drawbacks: not all the fields are encrypted. There's potentially personal information that is transmitted plain text, which isn't as secure as 5G is expected to be, but it's much the same situation we have currently, where 3G and 4G signaling is not being encrypted. Additionally, giving IPX providers the option to amend the traffic can create additional complexities on the implementation, because with Prince, both the original and the amended field are present in the signaling, and the receiving operators has to decide on which of the fields it takes into account. While the big discussion might be around TLS and Prince, there's another aspect that we have to bear in mind. That's the option to outsource the SEP function to an IPX provider. Outsourcing SEP to the IPX providers solves several of the drawbacks we have seen both for TLS and for Prince in the previous slides. Roaming VAS is enabled or it's allowed to be done by the IPX providers. They can integrate it with current situations. We make a straightforward use of the protocols, as we don't have the complexity of Prince. The complexity of managing the relationship, and especially all the key exchange between the visited and the home networks, can be delegated to the IPX provider. That's the complexity that IPX providers such as us are currently managing for operators. That's managing the relationship with N operators can be delegated or can again be delegated to us. However, this solution, on the contrary, requires a good understanding on security between the mobile network and the IPX provider, and it requires, as there's a segment where the IPX provider can access all the traffic, that IPX providers are trusted. This discussion about the three options, TLS, Prince, and TLS with the option of outsourcing, are currently being discussed at the GSMA, and they have an impact on how 5G roaming will be done. And from our perspective, it's a subject where operators have to be aware of what's coming and eventually taking their own position. To see the impacts on data roaming, I'm giving the word to my colleague Lorenzo Bustos.
Thank you, Carlos, for your presentation. So, well, once we have understood all the network components, the protocols, and the architecture that are behind the new 5G technology, we need to, I will say that we need to ask ourselves the following question: how the operators and the service provider and the IPX provider are going to deal with the data growth and with the latency rates, okay? Because at the end of the day, these both topics are or will be key topics with the coming 5G, data growth and latency of the traffic and the performance of the traffic, mainly when we talk about the IoT devices, but also in the consumer area. So these are the two topics that 5G will need to cover. So next slide, Carlos, please. Talking about the data consumption challenge. Okay, here you can see a couple of figures related to this data growth within next years that 5G will bring to the market. We have the consumer traffic and the IoT traffic. From our point of view, both are very important. As you may know, in Telefonica Global Solution, we are working with both markets, consumer and IoT. Regardless of the impact that we had in the past or a few months ago, related to the COVID-19, we all hope to have a better level of traffic in the future and recover the situation. So considering that, based on a recent report of Kaleido, it is estimated that the consumer traffic will grow from 2020 to 2025 around 25% year over year. So, okay, and when we talk about IoT devices, it is estimated to a growth of 35% year over year. So it's a fact that the traffic will be increased with the upcoming 5G. The networks of the operators should be adapted to this new environment. Okay, there are a lot of work to do. The question is how these operators are going to address this challenging situation, okay, in order to become a proper 5G operator or provider. So first of all, we need to keep in mind the data growth apart from the latency. So there are the two key points that I am going to talk about within next slides. Okay, so next, please. Carlos. Sorry, the other one, sorry. The previous one, sorry. Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, and when we talk about the data consumptions, there is a new technology or use case that we have to keep in mind, and it's very important, which is the enhanced mobile broadband. It's a new concept within 5G technology. It's the natural evolution to existing 4G networks. Okay, this new concept or this new technology will provide the possibility to give to the users faster data rates and therefore better user experience if we compare with the current 4G networks. There are many applications related to this concept, services or applications that will require this bandwidth allocation in a specific moment, in a particular geographical area or a particular service. Talking about the video streaming, the augmented reality, the virtual reality applications, sport events, broadcasting, and so on. So basically, the idea of this concept is to provide or to allocate enough bandwidth in a specific moment in a particular geographical area in order to meet the requirements of 5G networks. Okay, so as you can see here in this slide, we have two figures in 4G and 5G. The bandwidth that we can provide or the operator can provide, it's around 100 megabits per second, and the idea is to provide better rates in 5G from 1 gigabits per second to up to 10 gigabits per second. Okay, so with this concept, the idea is to, as I mentioned before, to provide enough bandwidth, okay, for this 5G technology, and this is a development that operators should do in the future with the upcoming 5G technology. Okay. Basically, within the enhanced mobile broadband use case, there are three features that we have to take into account. Okay, first is the higher capacity that we can provide, because the broadband access must be available in populated areas, both indoors or outdoors, like for example in city centers, office buildings, sport events, venues, or conference centers. Okay. The second feature which is important to have into account is the enhanced connectivity. Okay, so the broadband access must be available everywhere to provide a proper user experience. And third, the higher user mobility. Okay, will enable mobile broadband services in moving cars or trains or airplanes or whatever. Okay, there are the three features that this technology will bring to the market. Okay. Next slide, Scott. So, as I mentioned before, there are another important thing related to 5G, which is the latency. Okay, so how can the operators can deal with this latency or can address this issue of the latency? It's important to keep in mind this architecture in 5G. Okay, without this architecture, there won't be any possibility of providing this kind of these latency parameters. Okay, we have the current model where we have the control and user plane, in the same location, and in 5G, the idea is to have the control traffic or the GTPC traffic in the same location, okay, but the user plane, the GTPU traffic, in a separate location, okay, in a separate way. With this technology, or with this architecture, the idea is to allow the operators to separate the both packet core, okay, into a control plane that can be seated in a centralized location, for example, in the middle of the country. And for the user plane, can be placed closer to the application which is supporting, okay, the traffic application or the end user when we talk about the consumer market, okay. So in that scenario, network operator can place the EPC user plane in a data center which is closer to the user, and therefore reduce the latency, okay. So at the end of the day, we are providing the internet access closer to the user or to the device, the IoT device, but the control plane is centralized in a specific part or data center of the country, okay. This scenario works very well when we talk about high bandwidth requirements or high bandwidth application like video streaming and so on. Basically, because the core user plane is located closer to the end user, the operator doesn't have to backhaul the traffic all the way to a central hub, and therefore the operator can save money because the investment and the expensive in local capacity and the backbone will be reduced. Okay, so as I said before, when we want to reduce the latency, we have to think about this kind of architecture, and there's a service or a architecture that meets all these two topics: the data growth management and the latency. Okay. Here you can see the data breakout solution that many IPS providers are putting on the market right now. In the left side, you can see the current model where we have the home routed traffic, the IPX provider in the middle between the home network and visiting network. We have the SGSN, which is the peak gateway of the visiting network, and the GGSN or peak gateway of the home network. The idea with this architecture, with this service, is to put closer to the user this internet access. So we are meeting the requirements of control the user plane separation, or CAPS concept, okay? And the idea is, to move to the data breakout solution where the internet is managing by the IPX provider, the internet access, and the network nodes of the operator or the EPC node of the operator is managing by the IPX provider and is deploying closer to the user. Okay, the idea is to have as many as possible GGSN peak gateway deployed around the world in order to reduce this latency and improve the quality of the navigation of the users. So this architecture also provides a cost-saving model for the operators because currently the operators are paying their IPX providers, okay, for dealing with this traffic and transport this traffic over the international network. And with this solution, the IPX provider become the entity which manages this international traffic, but with the deployment of GGSN around the world, closer to the user. So it's a new strategy, a new point of view of the IPX operators that will become a GGSN management instead of just a capacity provider, international capacity provider, okay, on behalf of the mobile operators. So thank you, Carlos. And now my colleague Mercedes Pulido is going to talk about the value-add services in 5G roaming and the evolution of billing concepts under the 5G technology.
Okay, thank you, Carlos and Lorenzo, for this great introduction and technological evolution of your network in order to be prepared to accommodate to the new 5G roaming. So we have been discussing over this time about security methodologies, impacting on the signaling, whether it's TLS or PRINCE. We have been always bearing in mind these new requirements of 5G roaming, these new use cases, what forced us to adapt our IPX and network also to this particular use cases of our 5G, and now we are better prepared to start playing. But so far we haven't start talking to our roaming partners, and something that we need to kick off now. So now it is about starting opening the 5G roaming relationship with your partners. It covers quite a few tasks again, the same it did in previous 3G, 4G roaming. Now we need to change some agreements on the commercial. We need to test on the IREC and the TARIC and so on, so that we went through previously. Let's start from the beginning. So from the agreement negotiations, we see here also two different phases. For the first one, the so-called non-standalone 5G roaming, what Carlos was talking about previously, we just amend the radio access network. So on that, there is no major change foreseen to be considered in the roaming agreement. Maybe if you have already changed to BCE, something we will talk a little bit later about, then you need to amend this annex under AA13, but otherwise nothing really changes. The major change comes when we jump to the non-standalone 5G with a new 5G core. There is a new signaling in place, a new charging method in place, the BCE, and we need to test again, and the IREC and then the TARIC test. So a brand new agreement is requested with your partners for both inbound and outbound. On the commercial side, you need to consider to change the annex for the charging and 13 and 12. You need to accommodate eventually the VoLTE aspects, the testing and the security annex of the agreement, and maybe also annex related to network slicing and edge cloud. The most challenging part is foreseen to be the IREC test. This is something that we are already seeing in the VoLTE testing. That is not very straightforward as we had it with previous technologies. Will be kind of, let's say, challenging based on the experience with the SIM profiles, frequencies, devices, software versions, and so on. So we understand overall will demand from the operator and from roaming partner a lot of resources in order to accommodate agreements and do the IREC and TARIC test. TGS, Telefonica, as provider of those service opening support. We do already this service for our customers for previous technologies, and for sure we will come along with the requirements of this new 5G roaming. And the idea is to help you or your operator to get faster enough coverage of 5G roaming for inbound and outbound. If you, Carlos, can move to next slides, please. So given that we have already enough coverage of 5G inbound and outbound, we need to take care of the roaming value-added service. As Carlos was talking before, the most important one is the steering of roaming. There will be also a must in 5G. It's not only because of the commercial reasons, of course, it's also very important, but you need to assure that you steer your outbound roamers in the proper network where you have available 5G and the rest of legacy technologies that at least for the time will not be disappearing. So the steering of roaming will strongly depend on the signaling model that you have been choosing before. Carlos was talking a lot about TLS and Prince. There is still not finalized the discussion within the GSMA working group. It is currently very active. Telefonica as an IPX and provider of roaming bus, we for sure attend any requirement of both models so that we can continue to offer the steering of roaming services to our customer. Not only the steering, the welcome SMS, or the other virtual home environment services will also be impacted by the 5Gs. Yes, we will of course adapt our service portfolio to the new requirements. So so far we have connectivity, we have agreements in place, we have steering, and everything is supposed to work fine. And I see it's supposed to work fine because the 5G use cases demands specific KPIs of qualities. So the benefit of the 5Gs is precisely this low latency and speed for data sessions. So what we have been observing over the last year is that quality of roaming was always playing a more important role for operators to guarantee the service assurance, and also reflected in the wholesale numbers. But this becomes critical when we talk about 5G. So again, low latency needs to be monitored and assured, and this will be driven in coexistence with the legacy technologies. It is not that 3G or 4G are going to disappear, at least for not 4G. So we understand that for customers, there will be always more and more difficult to attend all requirements. So roaming monitoring and quality is always not, let's say, core business of an operator. So we try to help our customers on that to show the quality, and 5G won't be something different. So our idea is to take care of the roaming and support you to guarantee this use cases KPI. Last but not least, we have now established our and guarantee our 5G roaming, but we need to monetize that. It will require an extra session for this BCE, but just to mention, 5G won't be supported anymore by the current legacy charging methods, so taps, and will be replaced by the billing and charging evolution BCE. Yes, Carlos, if you go please to next. So that was more or less the briefly overview that we wanted to offer you to identify which will be the impacts in your network and in your services for the introduction of 5G roaming. We go very briefly through this. First, you need to accommodate your network with new signaling and the accommodation of the new IPX traffic. You will have new agreement requirements, service opening. You will need a new VAS services accommodation, especially if you're the steering of roaming, and new charging model will be required also for BCE. So please bear it in mind when you analyze your requirement and when you look for a partner to rely on for the 5G roaming. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at any time. Eric, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mercedes, and of course, Carlos and Lorenzo for this insight. And let's move ahead with the panel discussion and the knowledge sharing. So let me ask you some questions, and let's start with Carlos, if you agree. Carlos, talking about security, from the presented options, TLS and TLS with SEP outsourcing or Prince. First of all, which you think is more likely? Secondly, could TLS and Prince coexist next to each other? And could operators be forced to support one of the two solutions?
Well, Eric, that's an interesting question, especially as the discussion is still ongoing. I think that the feeling amongst the operators is that their preferred solution is TLS. As we saw, it's from the implementation side, it's easier to do. There's not the complexity of handling with amendments. It provides the greatest security. And as an additional option to TLS, it's definitely the TLS with outsourcing. I think that we've seen it in 4G with multi-roaming, that keeping too much options, it's negative for the ecosystem. And besides of drawing an architecture on the paper, I think that operators have also to think about how they're going to manage it. In that sense, for us, obviously, SEP outsourcing, that's TLS with SEP outsourcing, is the preferred option, as it enables larger operators to have their own solution without SEP outsourcing, and smaller operators to let to outsource that solution and have their also the outsourcing of their value-added services as they do today. Globally, I think that having several options, that's TLS and Prince coexisting, isn't positive for the ecosystem. I don't think that operators should be forced to have both solutions. Although if in the market two fronts can be created, if half the operators choose one solution, the other half chooses the other, then probably operators will be forced to have both solutions if they want to keep in the market. So, in summary, one solution, and probably preferable TLS with outsourcing, should be the solution.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Mercedes, a quick question for you. What could be the impact of the new 5G signaling in, let's say, the source services? So do MNOs need to establish different mechanisms or platforms, or can we reuse the current ones used for 3G, 4G? And in conjunction with that, can 5G sort of be a managed service from a provider, or does it need to be provided by installing your own node on premises, for instance?
Well, there are two questions. On the first one, can the 3G, 4G be reused? Unfortunately not. So they will be kind of repeating what we faced in the past with the launching of 4Gs. These brand new technologies, IPX will be kind of reused, but new signaling is requested as discussed. So it is necessary to establish new 5G signaling to start talking. And then everything changes. So, and as we said before, it is not that you're going to replace one technology with the other. So it is a lot of work to do. About the second question, can an operator have their own, or is it necessary to have their own platforms on premises? Can the operator rely on a partner? The question is yes. Well, depending on the security methods used, as Carlos explained before, TLS or with outsourcing would be an option. It will for sure be possible to outsource this capability to a partner. What is granted is that you need to combine the 3G steering, for instance, with the 3G and 4G steering. So you need to bear that in mind when making the decision on how to establish the 5G security. It is a lot of work to do. Just don't want to be very critical, but we need to take time and go through that, and maybe relying upon how could be good solutions to speed up.
Okay, well, there's always a lot of work to do, so that's why we're in this business, right? Serving our end customers. So thank you, Mercedes. Lorenzo, quick question for you. I mean, CUPS and the breakout solutions have a clear usage for critical IoT, as we know. But do you see it as an option for let's say, retail roaming?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, yeah, the main application of this architecture are for IoT devices, okay, or IoT traffic, because at the end of the day, IoT is the service of the business that will require better latency rates, okay? It's a fact, okay? But think about your roaming experience or our roaming experience as a final user when we are abroad in some countries, in some networks. Sometimes the quality is not that it is in the home network. So I think that there is still a lot of work to do with the latency in the consumer or retail roaming. Okay, we are all in the new environment of roam like home offers, and many people say that it's the end of the roaming as we know currently know. And yeah, the operator still need to put focus on this quality of service of the final or retail roaming users when they are abroad. And yeah, this solution not only apply for IoT, but also for retail roaming environment. So I think that it is still important, and there are a lot of work to do for the operators. Yeah.
Okay, still, again, a lot of work to do, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Mercedes, coming back to you. What is foreseen to be the relation between 5G roaming and other legacy relationships like 4G, 3G roaming? And secondly, what is the impact if VPLM and HPLM are not synchronized in 5G service availability? Would a 5G to 4G handover be possible? What do you think?
It is foreseen. That is, in theory, it will be possible in the same way that it was granted and fallback between 4G to 3G. So it is important to have this as a kind of backup while developing the 5G coverage. The 5G coverage will be complicated. We see that now for 4G and mainly talking about VoLTE. So we really need a backup. It's important to bear in mind that only when both home and visitor operator are able to offer standalone 5G, the real 5G will work. So you need to grant the 5G capability from the beginning to the end of the chain, counting with visitor and home operator, but also with carriers and partners in between. So I guess it will be needed to grant the service to end customer.
Okay, thank you. Carlos, how does 5G impact the voice call service? And if 5G is supposed to be for data only oriented services, is MOC and MTC still possible, as in the case of VoLTE? And do you think that the same mechanism applies?
Well, I think that voice will still be an application that is going to be demanded, especially by the human users. I mean, I'm not sure if the IoT devices are so keen on voice communications. However, I think the big issue that we are going to see with 5G is inherited from 4G. I mean, we know that VoLTE and in extension VoLTE roaming haven't had the traction that was expected. On the national level, operators have been relying on the circuit switch fallback, and on the international level, it's the same. In 5G, we have the same scenario as with 4G. It's voice over data. Let's call voice over 5G, voice over new radio. It's a term that is being used, but it's the same mechanism as with 4G. And I'd say it's the same mechanism as in 4G, which we haven't implemented, or haven't implemented all the operators. So the great impact will be not 5G, but actually this 3G sunsetting. Operators all over the world are talking about decommissioning their 3G networks. They want to reform the spectrum. They want to get rid of that technology, which is completely understandable, because else they would be operating 3-4 different mobile technologies at the same time, which is crazy. So what we have to bear in mind is that VoLTE right now, or voice over new radio, is inevitable, and we have to move forward. In those cases where operators don't move to VoLTE because, well, they can't afford the investment of an IMS core or whatsoever, in the roaming scenario, we'll have to look for interworking solutions where someone, and IPX providers and carriers are a candidate for that, handle that interworking for the 3G networks that want to provide service on 4G, 5G only networks, and vice versa. So it will be challenging, but because of the pending action points that we have from 4G.
Okay, thank you so much, Carlos. And ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we are heading towards the end of this session. So I would really like to thank the keynote speakers, Mercedes, Carlos, and Lorenzo, and of course the sponsor, TGS Telefonica Global Solutions, for your participation and giving interesting insight presentation and sharing the knowledge from the GGS group. So from my side, it's bye for now, guys. I hopefully see you next time. Stay safe and stay sound. And for me now to give back to the control to my colleagues in the studio in Berlin. So it's over to you, Laura. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Eric. Dear all, we are at the end of this webinar session, and I would like to thank Mercedes, Carlos, and Lorenzo for the interesting presentations and sharing the valuable knowledge. I also would like to thank our audience for joining us today and listening. This panel will be soon available on our CC Media portal in recording format. Also, we're looking forward to welcoming you in our next webinar sessions planned for the 3rd and 9th of December. For more information, please check our event portals. If you're interested in supporting and sponsoring one of our future branded webinars, contact CC team. Also, for all updates and fresh content, follow us on our 5 social media channels. That's all from today. Thank you and goodbye.